Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Back Logic, where we dissect the latest political developments with a sharp eye and a critical mind. Now, this evening, we're going to dive deep into some political chaotic maelstrom of a mess that's been brewing in Washington, D.C. and beyond, from the Capitol to the campaign trail. The stakes have never been higher. So buckle up. We're going to embark on this roller coaster together of revelations, analysis, and of course, of some unfiltered opinions, of course. So in the past week, the political landscape had been nothing short of chaotic. From the streets of D.C. to the campaign trail, the nation is on edge. Let's start with the latest from Capitol Hill. The 2024 presidential election has left the nation in a state of shock, uncertain, because former President Donald Trump has secured a second term, defeating VP Kamala Harris. This outcome has set shockwaves through the political establishment and has significant implications for both domestic and foreign policy. So in his victory speech, Trump promised to make America great again and outlined a series of policies, initiatives aimed at reshaping the nation's direction. His administration is expected to focus on economic nationalism, stricter immigration policies, and a more isolationist foreign policy stance. I guess when Donald Trump got to the White House to get back briefed by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, the VP, I said it correctly, Joe Biden, the VP, I think there was only two words that Donald Trump had to say to them. You're fired. I think that's the case that we're essentially looking at. Now, the war between Ukraine and Russia, now deep into its third year, it continues to evolve with new challenges and global ramifications. The Biden administration has been at the forefront of supporting Ukraine, providing billions in military and financial aid. But as the conflict drags on, both the effectiveness of the U.S. support and the future trajectory of this war are coming into sharper focus. So over the last few months, Ukraine's counteroffensives have been slower than expected, while Western nations have poured resources into Ukraine's military. The battlefield has been characterized by heavy losses and limited gains. The recent breakthrough of Ukrainian forces in the south, while symbolic, doesn't change the fact that the war is at a stalemate. The harsh reality of trench warfare, combined with Russia's strategic use of artillery and drones, has created a grinding deadlock. This is one of the wars we should have never really been in. And I think if we had the right leader for the country, they would have most likely resolved this peacefully. Now, this brings us to a crucial question. How long can America sustain its support for Ukraine without seeing any substantial results on the ground? Now, the Biden administration has promised continued support, but mounting skepticism is coming from both sides of the aisle. Critics argue that Americans' involvement is reaching its limits, and the economic toll of endless aid is becoming harder to justify to the American public, because not only have we questioned this war from the very beginning, but the vast majority of Americans, I would like to believe, is aware of this war and the billions of dollars that it's costing the country and the effect it would have overall on the national interest rates, as well as the ongoing reduction, believe it or not, of inflation. So recent polling shows that while Americans still support Ukraine's fight for sovereignty, the support is a warning of the war that rages on. According to a Reuters poll, 51% of Americans say they now oppose sending more military aid to Ukraine. Republican voices in particular are growing louder. Leading figures like Senator Josh Hawley and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy are calling for a reevaluation of the U.S. commitment to the war, urging the Biden administration to focus on domestic issues instead. Now, at the heart of this debate is the issue of cost, both human and financial, because the U.S. have already sent over $200 billion in aid, and this number is expected to grow, with many critics, particularly on the right, want to know is what we're getting in return for the massive investment. Now, I simply don't understand Democrats, in a sense, when it comes to the national spending of our budget. especially supporting another war or other conflicts. Now, I know some people stand strongly on the right, some people just in the middle. I just want to be part of the truth. So if anybody ever wants to know my political party, it's called The Truth. That is all. Because when we look at these things, majority of American people does not side with the supporting financially of the Ukraine-Russian war. But somehow your tax dollars and my tax dollars continue to support a war that majority of us don't even really want. So here lies the problem. The longer this conflict continue, the more it risks spreading beyond Ukraine's border. We are already seeing signs of this as Russia has escalated attacks on NATO member states and their infrastructures, including cyber attacks on European power grids. A close ally of Russia, Belarus, has increased its military presence along the Polish border, raising concerns about further NATO involvement. So you have all these things stemming from a war that America is essentially funding. Now, the irony is that while the U.S. debates its role in this global conflict, it's Russia that strategically positioned itself for a prolonged war. Moscow is keenly aware that time is on its side. While the West, Americans mostly, are growing weary of this conflict, aka war, Russia remains firmly in control of key regions in eastern Ukraine and the Crimea Peninsula. The situation in the Donbas region, where Russia-backed separatists have yielded ground for years, is a microcosm of what have become the new status quo for much of Ukraine. And let's not forget, fam, that the human cost of this conflict or this war, civilians are bearing the brunt of these conflicts as Ukraine's infrastructure is devastated and the cities reduced to rubble. The daily toll on Ukrainian families continue to rise. And the American media has rightly focused on the bravery of Ukraine's resistance. But the longer this war continues, the more that the world must reckon with its humanitarian disaster, similar to the conflict that we have in Israel and Gaza, aka Palestine. So these are all things that we really should pay attention to, because when we look at this war and the amount of money that it's costing us and how it's affecting Americans, and a lot of people may not agree with me with this, but America first. Plain and simple, America first. Because at the heart of the debate is the issue of cost for both human and financial. Those are just some things we're going to continue to look at. Now, as we look at this, we understand that the world is watching closely, and a change in U.S. leadership in 2025 will lead to a dramatic shift in the policy. What am I referring to? Trump has already stated, and I don't know the timeline because he said he'd accomplish a lot of things in day one. Now, this may be more complex, or could he already be working on it? Because I did hear reports that he already had talks and discussions with Vladimir Putin. So hopefully some of those same talks, Zelensky is on the phone overhearing as well, so America can really be outside this war. But we've already seen how Trump he done before, it's kept America at peace. So that's the way that it has seemed so far. That's the way it has seemed so far. Because as we move to Trump, he has some good news. Trump has some good news. Because in a significant development, Special Counsel Jack Smith has filed a motion to dismiss the charges against former President Donald Trump related to the January 6th Capitol riot. This move comes in the wake of Trump's victory in the 2024 presidential election and the long-standing Department of Justice policy against indicting a sitting president. Now, the charges against Trump include conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding and obstruction of an official proceeding. Stemming from the events of January 6th of 21, Smith's motion cites the constitutional prohibition of prosecuting a sitting president at the basis for dismissal. So in Smith's filing, he said, it has long been the position of the Department of Justice that the United States Constitution forbids the federal indictment and subsequent criminal prosecution of a sitting president, basically stating that even before Donald Trump brought this up, we already had plans of putting this in the law. I don't believe that at all. He further emphasized that the decision is not based on the merits of the case, but on constitutional grounds. So not recalling the allegations or the charges thereof that Donald Trump was actually prosecuted, they're reacting, revoking, retrieving, and basically saying he is covered under constitutional law. Trump, in response, criticized the prosecution as politically motivated, claiming that over $100 million of taxpayers' money was wasted in the Democrats' party's fight against him. He described the legal actions as a low point in the history of our country. Now, when it comes to Black Americans, we should have stayed our ass out of that, and we didn't. And the reason why I say that is because we had certain attorneys, we had certain counsel to go after Donald Trump, and it really wasn't our political fight in the first place. It's not like we have a leg up or a leg in the Democratic Party. We see how we are treated each and every election. So as the nation prepares for the upcoming inauguration, the legal maneuver adds another layer of complexity to the political landscape. The dismissal of these charges may have far-reaching consequences for future presidential accountability and the interpretation of constitutional law. So stay tuned for more updates when it comes to these stories. They're always developing. Now, if you enjoyed today's, or rather this evening's broadcast, make sure to hit the subscribe, share, and like button. And if you guys have any comments, please share that in the portion below. So I all thank you for joining me here this evening. You guys have a great and wonderful day.